Hey guys, Miss Warren here. Today we are going to be drawing a skeleton in correct proportion. So in our last video we talked about how the average human is between 7 and 8 heads tall. So we have this guy divided up into about 7.5. So there's one length of the head is the top. The second length is where the shoulders and the sternum and the clavicle will be. The next section is the waist, where the body gets the smallest because there's no bones right here and here, and that should be about even with the elbows. The elbows should come to about the bottom of the rib cage. Then we have the pelvis. We have where the femur is connected to the hip, the pelvis right in here. We have the forearm and the wrists. The wrists fall right below where the femur connects to the pelvis, the hip bone right there. And then the hands fall even with the top of the thigh. We're going to go down the femur. This is the largest bone in the body. And then in the next section, we have the knees. Below the knees, you have the shin extended and then the ankles. So if you divided the body up into thirds, you go from the top of the head, actually, about the head to the pelvis. You almost fit 3 times. But if we just do the body without the head, this should be almost 2 more times. So we got the body shoulder to pelvis, where the hip connects. Then the top of the hip to the knee is about the same. And then the knee down to the ankle is about the same. So just make sure you're getting things the correct length and width. So also another thing to remember is the width of the head. The body is about 2.5, maybe 3 widths of the head if it's fully facing you. Your hips are going to be similar in width to your shoulders. Women tend to have wider hips because right in here is where you hold the baby, and they need that area to cradle the baby. So that in the skeleton, the only difference between men and women is that the hips would be a little wider set. Okay, so now we're going to look at drawing it. Now we want to focus on copying size, shape, and position. So first of all, I'm going to kind of draw the outline of the head, making sure it's the right shape, it's the right size, and it's in the right place. So right about here is where I finish the cranium, the top of the head, and I start drawing the mandible or the jawbone. So it goes down, then forward, and then across. Then I scoop down. Remember when we drew the face, the eyeballs are about halfway, the middle of the eye is about halfway between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin. So be attentive to that. The eye sockets are much bigger than eyeballs because they have to hold the eyeballs. And they tend to have a kind of more squared out shape, maybe a little bit like a rounded square. Then the nose bone goes out a little bit, but this part of your nose, when you have flesh on you, is full of cartilage. So it's mostly a hole there, so you have room to breathe and smell. Then right below the eye, you have the cheekbone. If you actually stop and feel the skin under your face, or under your eyes, you'll feel your cheekbone sticking out right here. Now, this kind of shows that the side of your head has a kind of surface to it. It's like kind of like a different side. Some people have this stick out a little bit more than others. Let me get the cheekbone on this side. It kind of sticks out before it comes in. Then you have the top, where your top teeth are. I'm going to just draw a line here and then I'll add the details of the teeth later. You have where the mandible scoops down. And your teeth, if your mouth is shut, are touching. I think I should get a little bit longer with the chin here. Then I'll add the details of the teeth by scooping up along here, and then doing kind of like a U shape for the teeth down at the bottom. Okay, let's see. So my head looks a little wider and a little more scrunched than this one, but I've got all the parts in there. I can go back and kind of fix it a little bit. Let's check. Yeah, I think the head needs to be a little bit more narrow right here. A little bit more narrow right here. And a little more shape right here. Okay, so we've got that. Then we have our first vertebrae. The vertebrae are the pieces of the spine. So we have in the first square, see here we have this first vertebrae. And it lines up with where the jaw turns. Now, it might help you to draw a line from here down to this line to kind of mark how long the vertebrae is going to be. And it kind of curves back and goes forward. Now let's see how many vertebrae, about 2 or 3 vertebrae before we hit the clavicle, the collarbone. So we're gonna do kind of a scoop on this side, a scoop on that side. Then you have your collarbone. It's about a head on this side and a head on this side, but the body's turned so it's more narrow on this side than that side, so pay attention to that. So I'm gonna scoop the clavicle or the collarbone over. Then I'm gonna draw the sternum, this bone in the middle of your chest. I'm gonna draw a general shape and then I'll fill in with like the little scoops when I start drawing the ribs. I'm gonna draw the clavicle on the other side. It goes down and then up and kind of wraps around your shoulder. Make sure, I think I got a little bit long with that. I'm gonna make that just a little bit shorter. And you've got some ribs that are hiding behind the clavicle here and here. So your ribs are starting about here on the back side. Then you have your shoulder socket. It's a little bit rounder here because there's like a ball inside there so you can move your shoulder all kinds of directions and it sits inside there. And the bone gets scoops in and then flares out about here for where your elbow is. Scoops in and then flares out. And you have your elbow joint so you can bend your elbow back and forth. Okay, the next thing I would do is I would start on the rib cage. I'm gonna draw the shape of the rib cage and then I'm gonna fill in the details. So the ribs go down close to about where the elbow is, and they're rounded. And they touch the shoulder on this side, and then they kind of come in, and then they V up. Ooh, I should have drawn that sternum longer, because look, the sternum goes all the way down to this line. But it gets skinnier here. Then we have to look at like which directions the individual ribs go. This is probably going to be the most time-consuming part of this drawing. So we've got a rib. These ribs kind of scoop up this way, and they connect to that sternum. They kind of scoop down and then up, and down, and then up. Got to have room for your lungs in here. And as you get down, you have to get room for your stomach. You think your liver is protected by your ribs. Kind of an opening here. Scoop in, go around. It's a cage that protects your heart and your lungs, but all this is flexible in there so you can breathe. And it starts scooping more up because they all have to be connected to the sternum. Okay, then you have your vertebrae peeking out. Here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 vertebrae visible. before we get to the pelvis. And behind your vertebrae, you got a lot of muscles in your back helping support your back here. And in here is like your intestines and your digestive system. Then we have our pelvis. Let's see. So although our spine goes further down, our pelvis is like holding it and cradling it and going all the way back up to this line. Our pelvis is going to touch this line. I think maybe I should have made the rib cage a little shorter. I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. So the pelvis touches, scoops around, and cradles our spine. Our spine is connected on the back, and it goes further down on our tailbone, but you can't see it from the angle. This part of the hip is just peeking out, and it overlaps this line just a little bit. So pay attention to where the line overlaps. Goes forward and then in. Then you have a kind of like a hole here. It's like a little basket for your intestines almost. And it kind of has a different surface down here. So here's the top edge, and then here's the part going to the back. And then just like you have a shoulder socket up here, you have a hip socket right here. So you can move your leg all around, and then it angles out before your femur starts. I think I drew the hips a little bit bigger here than on this one. So this is definitely a woman with the bigger hips. We want to get it pretty approximately accurate there. All right, so go ahead and get started on that. Just copy it one form at a time. Probably the next more complicated area is the hands. I would draw the general shape of the hands kind of like this here, and then I would fill in the finger details, kind of like we did the ribs and the teeth. So continue on this, and I look forward to seeing your work.